Welcome to BVTV Network, coming to you from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. My job here is to be open to everything that's legal and moral. I aim never to close my eyes to initiatives, ideas, and innovations. However, when I first met my guest of today in a double interview, I will admit to being a bit dubious or skeptical about her offering. But then I kept my openness and became impressed. So much so that I wanted her to come back today as my solo guest. My guest, whilst working in business, observed the synchronicity of astrological cycles associated with sales, project development, marketing, manufacturing, purchasing, legal issues, travel, contracts, and much more. Her combined experience in both astrology and business led her to the development of the Good Timing Guide to provide better productivity for all types of businesses. I've got a personal copy and it's fascinating. I'm hooked. So let's go to the northwest of the USA and say hello to Madeline Gerwick. Good morning. Hello, Madeline.
Good morning, Malcolm. So great to be with you again. Thank you for having me back.
I said good morning, but to you over there, it's almost good night, isn't it? How is the heat?
Well,
how is the heat? How is the heat near Seattle?
A little bit too warm for us. Yeah, but it doesn't usually stay that long. So we always look forward to when it cools down a bit.
Right. Well, I have been reading about the horrific fires and that heat over there, but we'll talk about the impact of the climate later in our conversation. Madeline, I trust you didn't mind my original skepticism. I'm converted now, by the way. Viewers and listeners, I'll be talking to Madeline in three parts. First, I'll ask her why good timing is necessary. Who needs it? And bluntly, does it work? In part two, I want to ask her, how does it work? I'm giving her the scenario of a startup, IT business, and asking her to take us through the advisory process and usage of the guide for that startup. And in part three, I want to take us into today's challenges and talk about how the Good Timing Guide can help us, especially in climate change, which is impacting all of us around the world. Madeline, before we get into our three-part talk, though, can you please briefly introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Madeline Gerwick, and what prompted you to produce the Good Timing Guide?
Well, I was working in business, and I was studying astrology, and I passed my certification test. And one of the things that I kept noticing was that we were doing things at bad times. And so we weren't as successful as we could have been. And one of the things that really convinced me to focus on somehow providing timing for people was that I was working for the top company in the world for a test equipment company. And they were the leaders in their field. And they had decided to improve a product so that it would be less costly to produce. And after they did so, and theoretically had tested it and so forth, it turned out that we had to do an international safety recall. And it cost the company almost $1 million to do that. And I realized that they had done some of the testing at a bad time when they wouldn't have realized that they were missing important information. And so I just thought, geez, if this company, which is the world leader, can make $1 million mistake, just from timing, bad timing, how many millions and billions or even trillions of dollars are wasted every year from bad timing? And so when I decided to make the leap and become an astrologer, I decided I would find a way to produce what later became the Good Timing Guide.
Brilliant. Madeline, let's start our talk. So why is good timing necessary? What's the thinking behind it? And who needs it? Also, let's put down the skeptics. Bluntly, does it work?
Oh, absolutely it works. And now here's a really good example of who needs it, which I would have to say is all business people need it. But you can use it also for personal actions which are important to you as well. And there are a lot of different important actions, but here's a data point that really impressed me. when I was learning about this, it turned out that back in the early 90s, there were a group of astrologers that went and randomly selected 1,400 bankrupt businesses to look at their company charts. So these are charts, astrology charts for when a business started with a state. And they wanted to know, are there certain cycles that occur which mean that the company is going to become bankrupt? Okay, so it turned out that 100% of these companies had what I call a timeout cycle. These are periods when the moon is not talking to any other planet. And so there's really no action going on. There's no activity to move something forward. It's kind of like it's kind of like the ball isn't in play. Like in sports, the ball's not in play, so you can't score. That's why I call it a timeout.
Right,
In astrology, we call these things a void of course moon. But what does that mean? That is an archaic term. So these timeout periods occur 3 times a week, and they can occur anywhere from a few minutes to really up to two days. Now, average, I would say, is 8 hours to 8 to 10 hours. Some of them are 5 hours or less. And if they happen in the middle of the night, no big deal. You're asleep anyways. But if they happen during a work time, then it's very, very hard to get something to move forward. And if you make a decision during those time periods, you're either missing critical information or you're misunderstanding it. And if you go ahead and make a decision and push forward because you feel like, oh, we have to make a decision, and I've been to those meetings, then what happens is you go down that path. Finally, the critical information comes in at a later point, and you have to scrap everything you were doing. All that time and labor and resources are down the tubes, and you have to start over to square one because you got information that causes you to make a different decision. So first thing I would say is it's great to know when it's not time to make a decision. Yes. Yeah. And imagine if you knew, that, oh, hey, it's a bad time right now. Let's just think about it. One time, the guys at Boeing Computer, 2 of the guys there had my good timing guide, and their computer system got completely screwed up. It was so screwed up, they didn't even know where to start. They didn't know how to even untangle it. And these 2 guys, who both had the good timing guide, looked at their guides and said, hey, you know what? It's a timeout. Let's just wait. This is going to be over in about an hour and a half. Let's just wait, and then let's see if we can figure it out then. So they waited. And at the end of the hour and a half, when the timeout was over, the computer fixed itself.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now listen, I've got to ask you a little favor then. Will you, when we finished our interview today, kindly do some work for me and tell me when we should be publishing this interview?
Absolutely. Yes. We'll definitely do that. Yeah.
Madeline, before we move to part 2, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your website address. Now, obviously, viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me, but for listeners, I'm going to spell it out to you. It's called PolarisBusinessGuides.com, and it is all the W's, 3 W's, Polaris, Polaris, PolarisBusinessGuides.com. Now, Madeline, how does my audience get hold of the Good Timing Guide? What's the process of buying it?
Just go to PolarisBusinessGuides.com and just click on the store. There you can get both. At the moment, we have both the 2021 and the 2022 guide available. And the one that your people would most likely want would be the online or ebook version, because it's kind of expensive to ship a hard copy over there.
Yes, yeah, got it.
And it also just makes it easy. You get it right away. It's just very simple to download it and have it on your computer, or you can just print it if you like. It's easy. Yeah.
Excellent. So remember, listeners, that's polarisbusinessguides.com. Madeline, so you've convinced us of its need, but let's say, how does it work? Let's take the scenario of a new startup business, say in digital services. They want to get it right. Take us through the advisory process and usage of the Good Timing Guide at the various points or milestones of that startup.
Okay, so first thing I have to tell you is that the Good Timing Guide is not good enough for starting a company. It would get you in the ballpark, but when you start a company, every part of the company shows up in the company chart. So I actually do consultations for businesses based on their company chart. And I can see every aspect of the company, and I can see what is going well and what's not going so well based on their cycles and so forth. But so when you are setting up a company, I ask somebody a lot of questions and get answers. And I'm looking for a date and time where the products and services are right. The company has a good reputation. They're well connected to their customers. Their money is working, so they have good income. They have good profits. They have creditors or investors that want to work with them and so forth. And their marketing and sales are working and so forth. So there are a lot of pieces to that. And those days don't come along that often. And not all good days are good for every company. So it should match, the energy should match what they're doing. Now, once they have a company, so I give people a date and a time. They're not going to get a lot of time. They might, depending on how far north they are, they might get 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
To start their company with the state. There's ways to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I give people very, very specific instructions how to do this. So there are good ways to get that done. And then after that, there are important things like when somebody is going to open their doors. Let's just suppose that they have an actual physical retail place. Then opening their doors is another time when they would want to use Good Timing. And then, you know, the Good Timing Guide has all these different, let's just look at August, for example. So on the guide, the top line is showing you the finish line. So for a new start, you would like the top line to be green, because that means that it works out the way you want it to. Yellow suggests that you didn't make it all the way to where you wanted it to end up. And if it's red, that means there's a timeout. And so you don't want to be doing anything then. And if it's orange, it means something is falling out. It's not coming together like you expect it to. But so the second line, where there's a little running man, that is telling you what's happening for marketing or manufacturing. So some kind of actual physical action. And the little telephone line, that one is communications, computers, travel, all of that stuff. And then the handshake line, that's relationships and negotiations and, you know, anything to do with contracts. And then sometimes you'll see these little green dollars appear. And so that means those are days that people want to spend their money. Oh, good. So perhaps if you wanted to send out an email promotion, for example, you might choose a time when, you know, there's a green dollar and a good final result, or, you know, a green dollar and a good final result and good for marketing, you know, or, and so on. So there's different ways to use it. And in the middle of the book, I have all these different ways that you can use the guide, you know, so it gives you actual examples of what to do in different types of jobs and tasks. So once the company is started, then they could start using the guide for just normal day-to-day functioning. But when you're going to sign like a really important contract, maybe you're going to sign a big contract with, you know, a big company, for example, and you want that relationship to work out super well. That's when you would like to have a custom timing. Or if you're going to launch a website and something where you're going to make a lot of money, that's when you would like to have a custom timing, because that's how you can much more easily get a home run.
Yeah, brilliant, Madeline, brilliant. Now, for our third part, I want to propose to you an of the moment question, which also has an astrological link. Our planet is changing. Temperatures are rising. The ice cap is melting. Fires, floods, the possible demise of the Gulf current stream, which would millions of lives at risk, even the planet itself. How can the Good Timing Guide help us through these challenges, if at all? Your valuable thoughts, please.
Okay, so the guide is not going to help per se with that. I mean, it is related to cycles, but these are very long cycles that are not visible from a sort of a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month type of situation. Now, what's happening with the planet, and you may have seen this, but NASA even put this on their website, that all the planets are heating up. So it's not just our planet, it's the entire solar system. And it's due to the fact that the solar system is traveling through a part of the galaxy where the frequencies are very high. So scientists will understand this concept, but because these frequencies are much higher than what we have been accustomed to, it's heating up the planets, all the planets, not just our planet. And you can actually watch this. You can see certain plants that are becoming scorched. They just can't handle these frequencies. So what these frequencies are actually designed to increase our consciousness. And it doesn't seem very friendly in the certain sense, because of all these other challenging pieces that are going along with it. But the idea is that it's to increase our consciousness, because everything that happens on the planet is based on our consciousness. So there is never anything that you see happening on the planet that hasn't been created by our thoughts, our consciousness at some level. So, so what's happening, you see, is these very, very long cycles. And some of these cycles are many thousands of years are happening. And these are known as ages, or some places call them yugas. And so and we just recently in December, we just changed over to the age of Aquarius. Now, each one of those ages is over 2,000 years long. And so there are some and then as each age comes in, there are different energies or different types of activities that become more prominent or more highlighted. So right now you're seeing a lot of artificial intelligence that's related to the age of Aquarius. But you have to be careful that you don't snuff out the individual, because it's the individual's creativity which pushes us along. So it's a balancing act between Leo and Aquarius. And and so this is what's going to be going on for the next, well, basically 2,100 years. So
I'm glad about that, because I'm Leo, so.
Oh, I wondered.
Definitely.
You have a Leo face.
Animalistic, yeah, I know. But what really fascinated about what you're saying there is something that resonates with me, because we run a program, The Conscious Leadership, which is about people, planet, profits, and purpose. And the amount of people that, particularly since the pandemic, who have realized that consciousness is important. Maybe poo-pooed it beforehand, let's get on with making money. And suddenly it's resonating consciousness totally with them. Is this accidental, or is it by cause?
No, actually, if you look at the age of Aquarius, it's often termed the water bearer, but he's not actually pouring out water. He's pouring out consciousness from his jug. Okay, so he's actually increasing consciousness, and Aquarius is a sign that's completely related to a consciousness. And what we had happen there was Jupiter and Saturn were together at the very beginning at 0 degrees of Aquarius. They got together at 0 degrees Aquarius. And we're going to be in an air economy for the next 199 years. So it is a very major shift that happened in December. And we're just in the very, very earliest stages of it. In fact, last year we had five extremely rare cycles, cycles that hadn't happened in hundreds of years, 1,000 years, 1,200 years, 800 years. I mean, just, and they all happened in 1 year. 1 year.
Wow.
So, yeah. And if you had one of those cycles happen in a year, that would be a lot. But 5 of them, I mean, that was practically unbelievable. I mean, I was just like, holy cow. So it is, everything is related to consciousness. And now that the age of Aquarius is here, people are becoming more aware of it.
Hey, and that was a great song, wasn't it? The Age of Aquarius.
Yes, it was.
I'm going to look up who later who it was, who was the team behind it. What was it?
The Fifth Dimension. Wasn't it the Fifth Dimension that sang that? I think it was. I can't remember.
I'll be doing that afterwards. Madeline, we all want to get it right for any initiative or action to be successful. That rocket to the moon needs perfect launch timing, for example. Right. But can the right timing be of value to you and me? I think so. And this interview will be published at the time advised by my guest of today, the founder of the Good Timing Guide, Madeline Gerwick. Thanks, Madeline.
Thank you for having me, Malcolm. I love being on your show. Thank you.